Dunloy are back into an All-Ireland final for the first time since 2004 after a thrilling victory over St Thomas's here at Croke Park. Finished up 114 to 13 points, and you couldn't but say that Dunloy were full value for their victory. Keelan Malloy scored 1-2, and the goal he got midway through the second half was absolutely sensational. What had been happening throughout is that Dunloy were dragging their entire forward line mostly out to the half forward line and between the 45 and 65 for puckouts. This time it broke down. Great catch by Nigel Elliott, who was excellent all day for Dunloy. He fed it on to Keelan Malloy, who soloed past Fintan Burke, who was the full back, who was more or less he was the last man back around 35 yards out, soloed through, flicked it into the back of the net off the stick. Brilliant finish from Keelan Malloy, and he finished with 1-2 over the course of the game. Conal Cunning was also excellent. He's the full forward for Dunloy. And the second half, when a nice bit of crossfield ball started going into him, and Keelan Malloy supplying some of those, he started to become more and more of a factor in the game. He scored 3. Sean Elliott, he was starved of possession for a lot of the game, but he scored a point. And I suppose the big switch came at half time when Paul Shields, the Antrim man, retired from inter-county service a couple of years ago due to a lot of injuries, and he just sparing himself for a club. But he came on at half time around the middle of the field, and the amount of ball he mopped up, he was just so cool and composed on the ball. And anytime he got it, he didn't have to go Fooster another 2 and 3 times. He just got the ball, moved it forward, and he was brilliant. And he was more or less a man of the match just for his performance in the second half alone, if you were to take out Keelan Malloy. But St Thomas's, they'll be hugely frustrated with their performance here. Injuries definitely played a big part. They were already robbed of Shane Cooney and James Regan as starters before the game. Now, Shane Cooney came on late on, didn't really have much of an impact. But they also lost Dara Burke just beforehand. His knee was heavily bandaged up. He was being treated. His calf was being looked at. His knee obviously being looked at. But ultimately, he wasn't able to start. Came on late on. Didn't have a huge impact either. And the brilliant thing for Dunloy here is this. Obviously, it's been so long since they'd won an Ulster title up until this year. Gregory O'Kane was in his 8th year. He was pushing this team on, and apparently the holy grail for them this year was just beating Schlockneil, who had been, foiling them so often in that Ulster Championship. But would they be able to go again? Would they be able to refocus? And they certainly were. And they're not considered to be a winter team, and that's what's often been said about them. Will they be able to go ahead and prove it in the winter? But they did in this game, albeit on what's often considered a summer turf. But they were so good, and to have the inter-county players who've played well at Croke Park before, like Keelan Malloy, Cunning, and the likes of Sean Elliott, I mean, it didn't go all their own way. They missed an awful lot of chances. So did Thomas's as well. And Thomas's will be so frustrated. I mean, in the first half, the ball just kept coming out so quickly. Éanna Burke and Brendan Farrell got a lot of ball in, but it never really stuck. It just came out that bit too easy. They couldn't really get Oisin Flannery into it enough. He was out in the half forward, and maybe he's more suited to being closer to goal. Éanna Burke ultimately came out in the second half, played a few nice balls in when Conor Cooney moved in. Damien McGlynn got himself a couple of points, but there was too few players on the St Thomas's team who stepped up. And of course, the players, the absences that we mentioned, definitely did hurt them over the course of the game, and they tried throwing everything forward late on in the game, and Conor Cooney had a few cracks at goal, including a 21-yard free that was brilliantly saved by Ryan Elliott. But ultimately, they just didn't have enough in the tank for this game, and Dunloy are through to a first All-Ireland final in 18 years. So visit ourstore.ie if you want to get some of that official merchandise. That's what we're brought to you by.